Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Torrance with SwordGuyBuilds.com. I am out here at the park on what was supposed to be the second monthly bullwhip field day, but it's been raining a little bit, so we decided to cancel. I figured I would take this opportunity to talk about some of the reasons why you shouldn't crack your whips in the rain or just when it's wet, as well as looking for optimal whip cracking conditions in general. So when we're talking about leather whips, I think it's a little bit easier to understand why water is the enemy. Leather, of course, is a natural material. It is technically biodegradable, though after the tanning process and all the oils, probably less so. But still, if you get it wet, you are inviting chemical reactions, you're inviting rot and mold and stuff like that. But that actually says nothing of what I believe to be one of the bigger issues from a sport perspective, and that is that both leather and nylon whips, when they get wet, if they get waterlogged, that changes the balance of the whip. And of course, where the whip is thinner, it will be taking on more water, or at least a higher ratio of water as compared to where it's thicker. Essentially, you are changing the density of the whip down the length of it. Now, when you crack it like that, you will be able to feel that it's a little heavier toward the tip of it. That's not necessarily a problem per se if you know what you're doing and you can account for that change in balance. The problem is that if you continue cracking it like that, it will stretch it out. It will stretch the fibers, it'll stretch the braiding, it makes it looser a little bit. Basically, you can crack your whip when it's wet, but if you're not careful, it will never feel the same. You may also find that you go through your falls and poppers way faster when they're wet. Another condition to avoid cracking your whips in is if you don't have a soft or otherwise very forgiving ground surface to crack on. If you're practicing on asphalt, concrete, gravel, dirt, sand, anything like that, these are all very abrasive materials that will damage the surface layer of the whip, whether it's nylon or leather. It just tears apart the surface layer. Now with nylon paracord, which is a woven material, it is woven out of very fine strands, right? You can imagine if you're cracking on sand or anything abrasive, you may as well be taking a tiny, tiny pair of scissors and just snipping down those individual fibers. It tears apart the braiding, it tears apart the individual strands, and that whip will never be the same. And the same thing does happen with any sort of leather. The leather will be more like a matted fibrous structure. It's not woven itself, but it's matted. And the surface of it is smooth, but it can still get scratched. And those little scratches, those little cuts, same thing, you're just damaging the whip. I usually tell people, as much as you can, only practice on dry, green grass. And I say green grass because that means it's alive and it's soft. If it is dead grass or dying grass, again, that's just a step closer to being rough and abrasive. You won't see huge negative effects from cracking on dry, dead grass, but it's not awesome. The last thing I'll mention that I'm sure we've all had our little experiences with is cracking in the wind. Even a very light wind can send the tail end of your whip off path. If you are cracking in the wind, you can expect to hit yourself more, you can expect to whiff cracks more or tangle more. The whip will just not be working with you. That's the biggest problem. The whip has to be able to cut through the air in order to crack properly, especially for sport purposes, moving between different cracks and stuff like this, target work, anything where you need the crack to articulate in a certain way or land in a certain spot. Wind is the enemy. Now, how much wind becomes a problem? That's a little bit difficult to say. It depends a lot on the mass of the whip, how heavy it is. It depends on the weight distribution of the whip and the overall taper. But I do think you'd be surprised at how easily a light wind can blow your whip off course. So to summarize, avoid cracking in the wind, avoid cracking on hard, rough, or otherwise abrasive surfaces, and avoid cracking when it's wet. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope this helps. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I will talk to you guys very soon. Thanks. Bye.